Hello, everybody, and welcome to another old world news video. Because apparently I'm doing these daily now. Because I'm excited for old world, as you all should be. I hope. Even if you're not, then I hope you're enjoying 40K or Sigmar or any other spectacular games because they're all great. I'm just hyped up on old world right now, so I'm going to keep talking about it. So anyway, today we have the Old World Almanac Designers Roundtable number 2. New graphics and miniatures. I have not read this yet. I actually just came back from the gym, threw on a little pullover fleece on my lunch break here. Have a quick nip. And yeah, we're just going to go through this one together. So hopefully, it won't be any longer than the usual one, but here we go. Old World Almanac. Designer Roundtable, new graphics miniatures. Yesterday, cracked the lid on the first series of roundtables. Old World. Today, we're digging into design decisions behind the new miniatures and heraldry that accompany the Kings of Bretonnian and Kings of Khemri. Alright, so just on these two today, which makes sense. That's the launch box. Let's get the hype up. So let's get this brightness down. There we go. See more natural color now. Alright, where'd you start with the new miniatures for such beloved factions? And there's multiple developers here. I might skip past their name, but they're all, I assume, wonderful people, and they're doing a great job, and I'm excited for what they got going on. So anyway, Bretonnians and Tomb Kings kind of been the stars of the previous editions for a while, as the community both loves them, felt natural, fit for the old world, plus, since they don't exist in any real way, shape, or form anymore that is what they were, it's a great way to reintroduce this game for sure, in my mind. Like, yeah, it's good business decision, and yeah, good narrative decision too, from what it seems like with where they placed the whole setting from yesterday's chat. Let's see. Giorgio actually managed to find a massive tome of Bretonnian concept art, background, heraldry, and everything that the old Warhammer design team had put together years ago. What if it's like the old Herald books? I have the High Elf heraldry book. Maybe it's like what they would create that off of. It sounds like this is a little bit more in depth on that. Essentially a style guide from the old studio, put together at the end of the project. They had collected all the assets, box art, packaging, transfers, copies, concept art. Okay, so it's a lot. Into paper form, then rationalized it all. Effectively a legacy of the particular period. So it's kind of cool that at the end of the, after the end times, when that was all wrapping down, they at least compiled this stuff, so it wouldn't be lost, so we could reach a place like we are today where Old World's coming back, but all the information is still there and they're not having to piece it together from various sources. Beautiful artwork there. Book gave us a great launch pad for new miniatures, contained the seeds of new things that we've not done before, such as the locks, which are new motif in the Bretonnian range. Okay, like chastity belts, I guess. Anyway, the big desire with the Knights of the Realm on foot was finding specific themes that could be particular to Bretonnian, then showing them through the attire, equipment, amulets, little trinkets. Very cool. That's what we see in the great models they produce now for Age of Sigmar and 40K. Gonna be fun to see it retroactively back in the old world with the new models. It would be very easy to make them look like historical knights, so we had to dig what makes them Bretonnian, not any other generic fantasy knights, and importantly what separates them from Empire Knights, those factions of similar aspects, so how to differentiate them. That's good. Excuse me. So yes, even though it's like a King Arthur knight style, they're making it more their own, more Warhammer, I guess it seems like. So that's fun. Which is probably a big step for why they're bringing this stuff back, because IP reasons and all that. It seems like they've found their niche to make them like this is what makes it Bretonnian. See, legendary Arthurian style fantasy of the questing knights, with their devotion to the lady, is the angle we wanted to hone in on, make evident in the miniatures. Helmets, oversized heraldic elements. We love big helmets now, Warhammer apparently. And one even has a sculpture of a lady on it. I love that one. That's the best one. Helmet, hat lady, perfect. Came about through revisiting old concept art and original miniatures and paying tribute to them. Locks that appear on the miniatures have an element of superstition on them, symbol of how they bound themselves to the ladies, representation of their faith as a reminder of their quest. Very immediate, relatable way of presenting these promises. Also chastity belts. Because I'm sure we've all seen Robin Hood Men in Tights at this point. If not, go watch it. It's a great film, as long as you're 18 plus. Or supervision, I forget. Anyway. Many of these knights have gone on quests, some campaign for their duke, and they've made promises to people. Some have the strange little reliquaries and boxes on their person, with odd little Warhammer style stuff locked away in them. Perhaps a body part, a bone, something a bit mad that makes them uniquely Bretonnian. They worked really hard to be faithful to the original designs, and also the Warhammer aesthetic wanted to pull back slightly from where we ended up in the end times to simplify some materials and details, focus on fabrics, the root aesthetic of this earlier time period. Digital sculpting has changed things a lot. Sure has. Glad that they're, you know, using it in this old world setting. Get a level of accuracy and detail we just couldn't before, but also increases the amount of space we can work on for each miniature. So balancing that's important. Can be real. Yep, I am not a miniature designer, so kudos and hats off to being able to do that. Just through the way older technology works, the older frames had so much space on them compared to new frames. There's a statement of intent here. This is what you can expect from old world going on forward. Okay, very nice. We're going to get stunning new miniatures as we go. What is the genesis of these centerpieces and character miniatures? One thing we knew is we wanted a new centerpiece for each range. Ideally, we wanted to be a launch block for each faction. Pegasus, Bone Dragon. Pegasus is archetypal for Bretonnian. Pegasi have been different factions in history of Warhammer, but when the Pegasus Knights were designed for Bretonnian, it sort of cemented them as a feature in the army. It sure did. I mean, I have Pegasus in my Dark Elf army, but it's obviously, and my High Elf, but they're Bretonnian Pegasus. They're converted because of old lore and history and stuff. Anyway, this comes from a long history of Warhammer art miniatures, so we have an idea of our minds exactly how it should look. And I like this new style. It's so good. It's so good. Challenges coming at from a more contemporary angle. Make the kit like this. Plastic is a crowning moment. It's creating an almost perfect kit with level detail and finesse. For the Pegasus, so much is the impact coming from the wings. Yep. Harsh elements of sculpt. Yep. I'm sure. But beautiful in the end. Yep. Graceful and connotations of the angelic and divine, legendary. Tomb Kings needed a centerpiece to match. We gravitated toward the dragon because Warhammer Fantasy, dragon is a great and grand thing. Very true. They're not everywhere like they are in Sigmar. But for the Tomb Kings, it's a horribly evil thing. Bretonnian, Pegasus, symbol of virtue and nobility, whereas dragons faces off against an ancient evil representing inhuman power. In part, about resurrecting old glories for us. It's going back to be the big spine dragon design, with its wings without membranes. While Tomb Kings themselves, in the glories of their life before resurrection, there's some freedom to pluck features and symbols across the expanse. Big arch and pelican. I like this. The one thing I wish this model had, and it's not a gripe because it's still a great model. I wish they had mummified the wings, so we'd still have wings, like membranes. Not great, not like tattered, broken, worn ones, but like just like bands and ropes. Like I want those to be mummified. That to me that would have made this model just the pinnacle, because like it's a great model on its own. Just the wings just need a little bit more to me, and still get that evil vibe. Anyway, neither here nor there. Khemri, even more Bretonnian, our faction that have not changed in years within the fiction, essentially hit a point of stasis when they died, so couldn't really change aesthetic too much. Quite literally preserved. Hard to imagine something else. Magical Vulture, the Lich Priest, nice example for us pushing the boundary in the past. There are things you couldn't achieve with sculpting. Technology means fewer limits, but important to consider how we can push things while still remaining in the old world. Very true. Imagine it's a hard line you have to keep in because there's so much great stuff in Sigmar, and you could kind of maybe even allude to it a little bit, like foreshadow it in weird ways, but you go too far and all of a sudden it's not a Warhammer Old World model anymore. Is working on World of Legend different than working on other settings? Limits on what can be changed. Let's see, Questing Knight Paladin was one of the earliest miniatures we worked on. Swiftly realized we had to determine an aesthetic for these new old miniatures. We couldn't do something completely new in terms of aesthetics because we're releasing classics. Have to blend in with the classics because they're not redoing the whole lines left and right. It can't blindly recreate. Dip our toe into the future might also be kept in keeping their foot in what was. Okay. And I think they did a good job, Bretonnians, honestly. So when the opportunity presents itself to capitalize on designs we've seen in artwork or concept art, especially, it seems appropriate. It's foolish not to leap on that. We like to say it's a lot. We want to bend, not break things. Push things here and there, sometimes subtle ways. Other places will push far out in the future. There's a scope, come back later and push some things out a little bit further. Okay, so yeah, so over time you might see more and more further pushes, which is cool. So kind of get started and then grow from here. I say there's definitely a lot to respect and love from the artwork, which, yeah, the artwork is always more extreme than the models ever were, so now that we can probably make those artworks real, it's probably a great source to pull from, 100%. Let's see, the influence of Warhammer is far-reaching, extends beyond our games and miniatures into our merchandise video games. Some of this classic art has resonated for decades, and some of miniatures really are direct love letters to specific pieces of art. Others are taken 5 or 6 pieces of art, blended together. Boom, still feels like Warhammer. It's important not to forget the core identity of a faction, to always carry that forward in every new idea. When we talk about new elements, we're mainly talking about a new way of looking at miniatures because the difference between the originals and now, rather than the way of new looking at Bretonnian. Okay. Rather than a new way of looking at Bretonnian. Yeah, I like that. They're definitely showing the respect towards the old while still creating the new and kind of, you know, pushing things and pulling things and seeing where they can go with it. Let's see, Holly, there are more places to find inspiration than you might think. It's not all concept spread. Some of it comes directly from page furniture, old miniatures, and designs for boxes. Okay. I'm sure even like reading the lore of the old books, there's probably stuff in there you can pull from too. Definitely a thread there, although we're realizing across all of our game ranges that we're finally seeing the miniatures we imagined as kids, but in reality we actually have the technology to create miniatures of the same fidelity as older artworks. Yeah, exactly. Okay. I'm not here to change what Warhammer is. It's more about reminding people what they love, picking up things where they left off, taking the next steps. There's a lot of things we can do now with regard to finesse, detail, and fineness of the material, and a negative space we can play with that we could never done before in the past, though the whole process we were trying to stay true to what people remember. Okay, more of we're doing new stuff, but it's going to be old world. They're really solidifying that point, and that's great, which is good because when I want my high fantasy, I'm going to go to Sigmar. When I want my low fantasy, I'm going to come here. Everyone who's worked on this project remembers getting to Warhammer and playing the game, and all the emotions go along with it. Sometimes that nostalgic feeling is more important than reality. Yes. I buy into that real hard. I have nostalgia left and right. Trying to pay tribute to those feelings as well as the aesthetic, trying to bring a bit of fun that we all remember back in the day. The art and excuse me, art and iconography go hand in hand while the miniature designs are working on sculpting, the book designs are working on the artistic implementation of the heraldry and so on. For Bretonnian, we looked at examples earlier, iconography, trying to decide what was and wasn't clear, what was missing for each dukedom, dropped it a different example, drilling down the strongest, most important recognizable examples. Also, element of making the iconography consistent as opposed to the series of diffused elements. Once again, I love this one. This blue and black one, that's probably my favorite one. If I was to do a Bretonnian army. Let's see, we essentially rationalize things down to make it more concise. The rules of Bretonnian heraldry, what the motif is for the dukedom, primary heraldic device, for example. Symbol of Cornelis is the unicorn, which is primary element. Yep. Another example of a shift approach is the fleur de lis that appears across heraldry. This is a fairly generic heraldic device, but has been now made into one indisputably Bretonnian with the inclusion of a sword in the middle and the sharper crescents as far as more. Yep. So they took this shape that we have in our world that you cannot think to copyright, and they said, how do we make it copyrightable, and how do we make it Warhammer? Boom, there it is. Looks good to me. Difference between the world of the end times and world of legend also shifts our perspective on what Bretonnian is. In the world of legend, it's a shining beacon of chivalry and honor. At this point, history, they were really walking the walk. The rest of the world's primarily meaning exiles, crusades, not the paragons of chivalry that live in Bretonnia itself. We reflect that in the heraldry and the coats of arms. These are strict rules understood by knights that reflect an art background. Okay, great. And I do like that because, yeah, during the end times, things were just going crazy. And, you got to see the chivalric knights there because their homeland was destroyed, but it makes sense now that most of the chivalrous knights are going to stay in their homeland. Anyway, on to the Tomb Kings. They were interested in a lot of ways different. They're interesting and in a lot of ways different. There was a lot of ideas flowing around the old days of Warhammer, but nothing concrete. So iconography, we worked on it for Bretonnian. We had room to be creative. Khemri's collection of kingdoms, essentially an empire from before the world empire even existed in the old world. Focusing on ideas of crowns, adornments, define each kingdom, each top of skull, because it's the Tomb Kings. Also, idea perhaps that these crowns are ones they were buried with when they died. There are even some hints of older gods of Nakahara in there, if you know where to look. Oh, okay, interesting. So, I think that's one of the gods. The beetle's one of the gods. Obviously, the asp is one of the gods. That's cool. I like that a lot. Cult heraldry, the symbolism of the mortuary cult, is the most heavily layered and thematic. The skeletal vulture evokes a few ideas as a two-headed skeletal creature that feeds on the dead. There's an idea of Ouroboros, the snake that eats itself. Then there's phoenix imagery in there, but decrepit and skeletal, a nod to the duplicitous nature of the priests. They promised a royalty of shining gold afterlife, but they delivered something entirely else and different. The other icons of Khemri are heavily embellished, enameled, and jeweled. So it's very simple nature. The mortuary cult, however, emphasizes the self-aggrandizement of the Tomb Kings. Words are hard today. It is to be humble. The Lich Priests can't be seen as attempting to seize power by force. They are insidious and do strange and dark things. Alright, I think we're at the end. Yet more enthralling stuff from the people behind Warhammer. Tomorrow we will be serving up another slice of what goes behind the scenes with an article about how heavy metal applied their specific skills to the world of legend. Okay. I'm sorry you all have to listen to me talk about painted models tomorrow because I'm a quick painter, but I'm not a prolific painter. But yeah, this is fun. I'm enjoying these little articles. I think the lore one so far has been my favorite. But it's nice to see how they tackled these armies, which means it's how they're gonna go further down. So when they get to the dwarves, when they get to the dark elves, orcs, and goblins, they'll take lessons learned from this, and we kind of see what their process is, and we can all just enjoy a little bit more. But it's a short video today. Just read through that together. I like it. I'm super excited for Old World. I'm also super excited to see how people maybe take some of these into Age of Sigmar, and how people take Sigmar models back into Old World. Because I still love both game systems, but regardless, get too off topic there. Let's all go out there, have a great day, everybody. You stay Stormcast strong, happy hobby, and we'll see you tomorrow whenever we review the next article that's coming up this weekend. See ya.